All right, we are here for the R&D Circle. And as usual, Kent Smith will join us when he gets here. They get to enjoy our weekly experience, John, of Kent arriving right on his time, whenever that is. It is thunderstorming here really badly.
I hear that, yeah.
Yeah, so let me know if it gets too loud and I need to put headphones on or something. That's crazy.
So I'm facilitating today, right?
You are we could talk circles real quick. That's fun. So this is the R&D Circle. You call it the Research and Development Circle. I usually call it the Resource and Development Circle.
Okay.
We've never really defined it because we just call it the R&D Circle all the time. But we develop lots of resources. We don't do a lot of research, in all honesty. I don't think. I don't research very much at all. I don't think we research much together, but we definitely resource and train and develop resources. So that's really what we do. Our aim of the circle is to develop resources that connect and equip spiritual moms and dads around the world. So that's on our agenda there. And our domains, what are we responsible for? The books, leader lessons, Church 101 content, podcasts, workshop content, listed facilitator content, conference content, and even Instagram and Facebook to some degree, although you do more Facebook and we have a comms team now kind of doing Instagram. And our roles. So John's the steward of the circle. Thank you very much for stewarding the circle. John is also the facilitator of this circle. Thank you very much. And I will say this circle gets heated very often. And John's you're just wonderful at recognizing when we need to slow down, helping us listen to Jesus, helping us take deep breaths. And we're learning to switch into speaker listener when we need to. So you just have done a great job with us. And neither one of us would want that role. So thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I think that pretty much lets everyone know what we do here and who we are. Hi, Kent. We just
did a
circle recap for everybody of what this circle is and what we do.
So, excuse me, as Tony said, I'm the ordinarily the facilitator, although everybody, is totally capable of facilitating anything. And so it's a easy job. And it is like us to start with appreciation stories. As we're doing that, I'll share mine first, but as we're doing that, I just want to make note of the fact that on our little progress bar down there below, that we are at 12% of our objective. So we have so far $2,136 have been committed on a monthly basis to Luke 10. And there was just, I think just today, somebody committed $500 a month. So it's anonymous. We don't know who that is, but thank you. We are very grateful for that. So let's see, appreciation stories. I was sort of journaling with the Lord today, and the word that came to me was the word unprecedented. And what that means to me is that what we are doing, like going public with all of this stuff, in my experience, is kind of unprecedented. Back in my days as a pastor, Presbyterian pastor, it's not like anybody could come to our session meetings, our elder meetings, our committee meetings, or whatever. And we didn't always want them to come because it was sometimes kind of ugly, and there was politics, and there were all kinds of issues that got brought up. And so probably with good reason, the general public weren't invited. But by contrast, what we're doing here feels so unprecedented. And I think the reason we can do that is because we value and work so hard on relational brain skills. So we're always working on that, connecting with one another. We have ways of working through conflict. And so it feels like this is the healthiest community I've ever been a part of. And it feels totally comfortable inviting everybody to, come and watch things. So that
Can I interject, John, on that?
Sure.
as you're talking, the phrase that comes to mind is remaining ourselves in all situations. And Thrive mentions that a lot as a mark of true maturity. You know, a person who can remain who they really are no matter what's happening to them, right? So Jesus is being nailed to the cross and he forgives and he provides for his mother. Like that's who he is. So he's not cussing people out or angry. And can we remain who we are? And so we don't always get it right either. So we're not saying we always do this so well that we're willing to share with the world how good we are and how mature we are. I think that what we're saying is we're willing to show all of you that we don't get it right all the time. Maybe this meeting, we don't get it right. But we can call each other back and you've even said, this doesn't seem like you, Tony. What's going on? Right? Or John, you're not acting like yourself right now. What's going on? And so when we're not acting like ourselves, we see that as an opportunity for growth for each other and try to have compassion on each other and step into that, as opposed to letting it happen for one and just destroy the organization or, and ignoring it, or, just being hurt and going around talking behind each other's back. Anyway, there's probably many other responses, but we try not to do any of those. We try to create an invitation to grow together.
That's so well said. So not perfect, far from perfect, but healthy. And so not only being who we are individually, but also being who we are as a community, whether it's three of us or a larger group of people. So anyway, I just was reflecting on that today and very thankful that this community.
And if I can say, the reason that we're willing to do this is because you said it in your interview today. People need to see this modeled. Yeah. We cannot reproduce what we haven't seen. And so if we're not modeling our weakness, our vulnerability, and how we get it wrong and then get it right, or how we flow in and out of that, other people might not ever be able to reproduce it if they can't see it. So
what does healthy family look like?
Yeah.
And especially when we're dealing with conflict or disagreement or confusion or whatever. So absolutely. All right. So I'm in. Tony, you're talking. Why don't you go next? What appreciation would you like to share?
There's so many. I'm going to go to yesterday in our finance circle meeting when one of my best friends, Cara, who joined us just a year ago as our bookkeeper. So she's not in all of our circles. She's only in one meeting, like once a month, really, and helps us with our bookkeeping, but has tracked with me my whole life in all of our ministry and all of our risk taking. And when she was moved to tears after listening to Jesus and said, if any organization seeks the kingdom of God first, it's you guys. And I think we all were in tears. And I feel like coming from her, it just meant the world to me, and thinking that she sensed that from God too. I just felt very loved and seen. I think felt very seen by her and by God. Yeah. So I felt tender, loved, vulnerable, affirmed. I'm deeply thankful.
That's a highlight. Which brings to mind, Tony, is there currently, or will there be a place, if people didn't get to watch a particular, like the Finance Circle yesterday, where they can go to watch that? What's that look like?
Yeah. So eventually the videos will be on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. Right now we have several of those videos already up and running on my YouTube channel. So if people want to get there, they can and watch them. There is also in this software, I'm having a hard time finding it personally, but in this software somewhere, Hillary has listed some of those video replays so that you could click on them and find some of them. We don't have all of them yet because Rally Up software isn't designed to do what we're doing with it. And so they're a little backlogged in getting our videos to us. So that particular one, I replayed it all night and all afternoon yesterday. So it was available when we were not live, it was the thing available to watch. So hopefully people did get to see it. But if they didn't, hopefully by tonight, I'll have that on YouTube and I can post it definitely in our Discord channel. And once we're ready to publish those outside of our community, they'll be available.
So you said so can somebody go to your YouTube channel and watch those things? And is that just look for Tony Daniels?
I can put it in the chat below for now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's Tony M. Daniels, I think, is my YouTube channel. My computer's a little slow. Tony M. Daniels. And let me see if I can just I'll just share that in the comments at some point. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Kent Smith, down there in the moderately temperatured Central Texas.
Yeah, moderate by the Sahara Desert, maybe. Otherwise, pretty warm. We've been over 100 most of the days the last 3 or 4 weeks. So yeah, it's feeling like Texas in August. But I am deeply appreciative of life in Texas, despite that, and I'm also really grateful for what you guys were just talking about here, the blessing of being in a community that acts like extended family is impossible to overstate the value of that. And we've been watching it happen, experiencing it here, as you guys have been pointing out, online and sort of out there. And it isn't always beautiful, and it isn't always perfect by a long shot, but it is real, and it is filled with hope and with joy. So my appreciation story is just having an hour or so with my friend Tony yesterday, in addition to that amazing finance conversation, but where we focused for an hour on gentle curiosity around Kent Smith, and it's not remarkable because we spend time, as you guys were saying, all the time hearing from each other, making time to notice and affirm and celebrate one another. But I was thinking about how rare is it in the real world for someone to take an hour to listen to the big things that have shaped your life, that have formed you, and how many people long for that kind of attention. A time to just be heard, to be seen, to be celebrated for who they are. What a privilege it is that we live in this ecosystem of God's grace, where we see the beauty in one another, and we make time to uncover, to educe, to draw out the beauty of God that is each person as God's grace gift. And that was upfront and personal for me yesterday, and I just felt so grateful for it, the chance to talk and to be listened to, and to interact with my sister. So that was, it's right up there with the finance circle, because that was another instantiation where there's a whole room full of us paying attention around a topic, but really seeing and hearing from each other, as you were just saying, Tony. So, what a blessing. And John, as you were saying, how rare it is, because most of us don't have experience with that kind of attentive extended family, which is God's design for people, always has been. So, that's a privilege, and I'm grateful for it.
Amen. Thank you. And I'm thinking right now, Kent, of another aspect of that, and that is simply that we are, if people have been watching these this live streaming, that we start all of our meetings with appreciation stories. So it's on the personal, heart level kinds of things, and it could be big things or little things. It could be ministry things, or just, hey, a warm cup of coffee on a cold morning, or there's all kinds of things that we feel appreciation for, and that we are totally committed to spending as much time as we need to or want to on relational kind of issues in business meetings. I'm wondering how many people are watching today who have been in church leadership in some way or another, committees, or you were a leader in the church or whatever, and you think about the experiences you've had in business meetings. At least in my past, those weren't always things that I look forward to. So we are, we will sometimes spend a few minutes doing this, and sometimes a lot of time doing this, and somehow or other the business kinds of stuff, the task stuff, gets done. This is it's relationships first. So, okay. So this is the resource and development circle. Did I get that right, Tony? Not research, although I think we sort of do research.
Although we could start doing some research if you want to.
So it's out of this group that a whole lot of our resources come, that Tony had mentioned earlier. So after we share appreciation stories, we go to our agenda. We have sort of a running agenda. And so we're pulling that up, and we kind of look it over together. So I'll just kind of mention some of the top things here, and then we'll see where we want to focus. So we're noting that our next equipping circle is going to be July 5th. So that's a sort of sub-circle of the R&D circle, and that one only meets once a month. So what's Tony, what's different between equipping circle and R&D circle?
The equipping circle oversees the R&D circle, as well as there's another circle, the trainer circle. It's like, what's the other circle? And then the future consulting circle that we believe God might birth one day out of us, that will be a consulting branch of Luke 10. So equipping oversees all of the equipping circles that are there, which would be us, training, consulting.
I was saying it backwards, so thank you for correcting that. So equipping is at the center, and then these other circles come off of that. Also on our agenda today, often is the leader lessons. We have one that's been developed for July, and have we done a final consent on that? I know I gave some input on that. Where are we in that process, Tony?
Kent, have you had a chance to look at it at all this month? I'm gonna link it in here in just a sec.
Okay. Yeah, just what we briefly talked about, I think, in our last meeting, just sort of the overall topic. I haven't looked into the detail of it.
Let me link it in for us. Sorry, I didn't have that done. I have not looked at it, John, honestly. So we do need to get it to Corrine as soon as possible. So we could just say, if John's looked at it and he thinks it's good to go. I mean, we could trust John White.
Are you sure about that now?
Well, and it's
just to point out, I can't share my screen because my computer's not working to share screen, unfortunately, but it is a leader lesson that we have done before. The content was already developed, and you were just looking it over and adding if there's any videos that need to be added, podcasts that I might need to look at it to just see if I've done any podcasts on appreciation, because that's what it's on, which I don't know if I have, honestly. And my husband has a video in there, which is just fantastic. So, John, if you can, what part 2 is, if you can go in and we did have a part 2 of this lesson. When did we share it? It's the Emmanuel part of this, and we shared it at some other part. So we can just take that wording out altogether and say maybe in the Emmanuel lesson. That way people just know it's the Emmanuel lesson. Okay. If you want to go ahead and activate the things that you've talked about, and then I think that's great. Okay. It's good enough for now, safe enough to try, we like to say.
So Tony, for the sake of our people who may be listening, and I always think, there are probably millions of people watching us right now. So
that's right.
In my imagination.
Yes.
What is a leader lesson, and what part does R&D play in those leader lessons?
So the leader lesson is the content, if you will, of what we are all paying attention to as a community. Really, our leader teams are communities of practice. So when they gather, they practice skills. They don't necessarily have a teaching time. There's no one bringing some lesson to the group at all. The content comes to us through our leader lessons, and it's not just content, it's practices as well. So it's enough information to support what you're going to be practicing that month, because again, information without the whole-brained experience of practice is useless. So we want information because we need it too, but we need it with the practice to help us build that relational skill, whatever that skill is, so that we increase our capacity for relationships and for emotions and for sensing God's presence in the present moment, which is where we're all headed, right? So these lessons do that. They help, they support that. People aren't required to look at them. So you don't have to look at one to show up to your community practice, because again, it's about practicing when you're together, and you can always practice whatever you need to practice when you're together, whether you've read the lesson or not. So that's the beauty of the way we've structured our communities of practice. And that's very new for most people, because they've never been a part of groups where you can't not do the homework, right? Because your conversation or your whole meeting depends on the fact that you've done the homework. So this, we structure ourselves very differently. So these are really there for people who want to deepen, want to grow, and they have the time and the ability to do that. We have a lot of moms of small children. They don't have time to engage with this, but they can show up for the leader team and practice these things that they desperately long for without having to get all the intellectual concepts behind it or, have engaged with that.
So in general, we call these skills of highly effective spiritual leaders or spiritual moms and dads. And this is kind of the next step after Church 101, being a leader team. And how many of these leader lessons do we have currently, Tony? What's your guess? Roughly.
Probably 24.
Yeah.
Maybe 28. On here, John, real quick, let's try to stay focused on working instead of explaining to people what we're doing, because Jay and I will meet later, and we're going to talk all things training.
Okay.
So submit all your questions to Jay and I, and we will cover them in that hour, because that's the point of that hour. I want to make sure we stay in our circle and keep doing our work today, because that is the point. You asked here, are we seeing these two separate skills? Appreciation and interactive. Yes, they are fully two separate skills. And that is the point of this lesson, is to help our people remember that they're two separate skills, because a lot of people have a hard time sensing God's presence, and they need to just work on appreciation first to be able to then build enough joy in themselves to be able to sense God's presence. But if we try to rush them to make them find God in their appreciation before they even can go to appreciation, we're putting the cart before the horse. So yes, two separate skills. Like you said, I can appreciate this cup of coffee in my hand, and it gives me a vacation just like that physically. And then I can go and interact with Jesus about how he feels about my cup of coffee. But that's a totally separate skill.
Gotcha. Very good. So I'm just going to tick off the other things on the list that I think we probably won't work on today, unless you guys feel differently, just so people can know what's here. Number 6 on the list. Number 5 is working on the book, which we want to do together here. Number 6 is a book retreat. The 3 of us will be together in October to really give some focused attention to our next book, tentatively called Jesus Led. Number 7 is we'll have some pre-conference meetings before our conference in over Labor Day in Greenville, and that's on the list. Number 8 are steps for creating local Luke 10 core training. It's the idea of, what if we could do Church 101 in a weekend in a particular area or church or someplace? That's something that's sort of for the future. It's something we want to begin to work on. So those are a few of the things on our list. But I think we want to go back and really focus on the book. So let me just check in with you guys. Is that what we want to do today?
I think so. I do want to just make a bookmark, maybe go ahead and put it on our future agenda items, John, to pick up on the theme that you raised through your email with several of our folks about regional conference centers or something along those lines. That's obviously an out there idea, but I'm fascinated by it, and I'm eager to talk more about how we might engage some of the people that are feeling some burning in their souls around that idea. So looks like we've got some
let's add it to the mission agenda, Kent, as well, because this agenda here, we would talk more about content for something like that, or
right.
type of curriculum we would develop. But the mission circle, I think, really would be the first place for us to talk about what would look like and dream together about that.
Yes. I think mission and then equipping, because obviously that would be a major equipping strategic.
Which what some people don't know is right now we're one and the same as far as the people in that group.
Right. Yeah.
So John, Kent, and I meet for different focus moments when we meet.
Change hats.
We're trying to get the right agendas and the right content, but we do have others join us in that mission circle, and we used to have a little bigger circle than it is now. So, but it is funny sometimes.
So those are some places we think we're headed in the future. But for today, so Ken, Tony, you guys both were good with us focusing on the book. Tony, can I have permission to give people a little background of our work on the book? Would that be okay?
As long as it's short. I'm sorry. I shouldn't be a slave driver. Tony, you can do whatever you want to do.
Keep it fast. That's a good thing. So watch me delegate here. So Kent, would you give us a little overview, a short overview of this next book? What are we aiming at, and what's your sense of where we are in the process, just to give people context?
Well, many of our listeners will be aware that we're working on 5 books that grow out of 5 core values that Luke 10 shares. The first of those we've written a book about, Joy Fueled. And so the second book is broadly under the category of Jesus led. The more we've kind of drilled into that topic, the more our sense is that what we need to do, there's a lot of good books out there on the notion of being led by Jesus, listening to Jesus, listening to God, attending to God. I think one of the contributions that Luke 10 has to make that we're excited about drilling into in this book is the idea that the core intention of God's people, for God's people, as attention payers led by God, is that they do so in a culture of attention paying in a community. And so we're still wrestling with what the topic even or the title of the book would be. But for now, we're working with the working title of Jesus-led culture. And maybe a humble way to say that would be toward a Jesus-led culture. We don't want to make any claims that we've got this all sorted out, but we're definitely drilling into that idea in this book. What would it be like? What have we been learning in Luke 10 about living as a Jesus-led culture? And how could that become sort of a foundational platform on which to imagine all kinds of amazing kingdom community emerging if we get this piece right? So maybe that's a 40,000 foot look at what we're working on in this book.
It's good. It's good. So we have done, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, perhaps. We have worked on pieces of this puzzle. All 3 of us have done writing on different parts of what we think the book will look like. And we're not at the point of putting those pieces together yet. The part of our process is somebody will write on a section and then we'll process it together. Probably a very different way of writing books than most people do it, but it's consistent with Luke 10. We do it as a kind of a community. And I would say also yeah, go ahead, Tony. Sure.
I was going to say, we also spent a lot of time getting on the same page with what we thought the book should be about. Yep. And unfortunately, my beautiful map is, it fell off the wall, or it got, I don't know, but this is part of our mind mapping stuff that we were doing at the beginning. Yep. And, we have just spent a lot of time mind mapping, trying to think through what would the parts be, what would the sections be, what all needs to be said, what does not need to be said until later. That took almost a year of work before we started writing. I think that was probably the hardest part for us three to actually agree on what needs to go in this book.
That's true. This is a lot harder than any of us thought it was going to be, I think. So, and it is in the context of the larger story of we think that the Lord wants to use Luke 10 to help change the culture of the church and of Christianity. And this is an important, maybe the central part of it. So Tony, you've done recently some work on what we're calling part 1 of the book. And you're kind of coming to us saying you'd like to kind of work it through together.
Right. I think, and you might want to share screen because my screen share is not working. I mean, it might work today, but it hasn't been. And in the part 1 link right there, I did include the intro, but we don't have to read through it. In fact, I would suggest we don't. And then I did include kind of how to read this book in there. So y'all see that again. And then it starts in with part 1. I just did that so that when I was writing, I could go back and put myself back in the context as I needed to keep writing. So we can jump into part 1. Lots of our people have already read our introduction at the conference last year. If you were there, we usually share some things at the conference. So most people won't be too terribly lost. And hopefully, this is part 1. So might not be lost even if we just jump in.
Just tried to share my screen, but it, for whatever reason, doesn't come up. So I don't know.
Let me see if I can do it, Tony.
Okay, you try it, and then I'll try. If all else fails, I'll try again. Yeah, we might even need Hillary if you're around and can share your screen and join us. We might need you to do that because we usually like to be on the same page together while we're reading. But I will send you the document, Hillary, just in case. She might not be present with us, but. Yeah, that's one issue we have not worked out is why some people can share screen and some people cannot.
Yeah.
So let's see here. I think. I'm looking. Are you all looking at my screen at this point?
No, can't see it.
Okay.
There's a button here that says the stage layout is currently controlled by Tony Daniels. Does that mean?
Okay, well, I will try. Lord, please may it be so that I have the control. I will try.
I'm back. I can do it.
Okay, well, let me try real quick. No, it says another user is sharing their screen. That's what it says every time I try to share my screen. So irritating. But I'm going to try anyway. Tell me if you see it.
Ooh, there's something.
Do you see it? I did it, Hillary.
Yay. I'm so proud of you. I see it.
This is amazing. Okay.
And you're just going to have to zoom in a whole lot.
Yeah, I sure will. Thank you, honey, for being available.
Sorry for the delayed response. I was listening to you guys outside and then couldn't respond.
They need
All
help.
right, so Kendon, John, you're going to need to make sure you hit the button to make this big for you anyway.
Right.
To make, and then I'll make it bigger on my end. So hopefully we can all see it.
I can read it at this level.
Okay, great. All right. So close your eyes while I scroll.
So skipping through the introduction.
Yeah. And then how to read this book. I don't know if you want to read this again, John. Do you want to read through this again?
Sure. Let's do it.
Okay.
Want me to read?
Sure.
All right. So this is after the introduction, how to read this book. When reading a book, one often just starts at the beginning and reads to the end. We want to give you permission to not necessarily read this book that way. We want to encourage you to pay attention to what piques your interest first and start there. In part 1, we share how much God longs to have a relationship with us, delight in us, and communicate with us, and how we were designed for this secure relationship. This part is more theological and neurotheological.
And I define that in the footnotes.
Gotcha. I see that footnote. In part 2, we will tell you the name of the insidious virus that is infecting the church today, explore how it works, and share how to eradicate it, both from your own life as well as in the broader community. Our aim is nothing less than the transformation and restoration of Christian culture worldwide. This part will definitely be a deep dive into some intellectual ideas. Part 3, each of us will share our own unique story of how this epidemic infected our lives and the lives of those around us. Each of us traveled a different path towards living more Jesus-led, from knowing about God to being with God, from thinking about God to thinking with God, from relying on our own interpretations and strategies to receiving God's real-time comfort and perspective on any given situation. If you like this story, this is your starting place. Part 4 is the practical outworking of what we are proposing. Emphasis. We will write more here. What we're writing about in this part. Once we know what we're doing, we'll write more here. That's a placeholder, sort of. So there you have it. Permission. Permission to go with where God leads you first, or where your own interests are stirred. And may you find your next step towards a Jesus-led culture.
Reactions to that before we move on.
You want to read that?
Yeah, let's do that. That's my footnote there.
All right. We believe that the God who inspired the writing of Scripture, the Bible, is also the same one who designed the flesh, bones, tendons, nerves, and everything else that makes up the human body, including the brain. It turns out that the relational and spiritual growth that we as Christians call discipleship is processed in the magnificent human brain. The application of brain science to our faith is called neurotheology. See Life Model Works for more information. Yeah, I think that's a good definition. So reactions to this part, where to start?
I really like what you've written here, Tony. I think it does a great job of catching the basic outline of what we want to do and gives the reader a sense for what lies ahead. It also, as you suggest, gives them a sense of some autonomy around how they go after this. And I think it recognizes the truth that some people are going to be more drawn to the story side of it. Others will be more drawn to the cognitive and intellectual theological backgrounds. And so I like that you're starting it off with that recognition. And I suppose the hope is that people who are drawn to the story will ultimately want to find their way back to the underpinnings of what we're telling, and vice versa. So yeah, I think this is a great way to kind of segue people into the book itself. Feels just about right to me, not too much, not too little in terms of total content. And I like the tone. It seems very readable, easily understandable, not a lot of jargon. That's my first kind of overall reaction.
Yeah, I agree. I have one more thing I wanted to look at. How's it feeling to you, Tony, reading that over again, having written?
Yeah, I mean, I think we looked at it once before. It's been a while. So I think I probably had incorporated some suggestions already from you guys once before. And then this time, I think I just added the footnote mainly as a shift before sharing it with y'all. So yeah, I think it's great. I think, like you said, it shows where we're going and lets people kind of have permission, to not engage if they don't feel like engaging with certain parts of it. So
I think it's a pretty unique approach to giving permission to people. I mean, they have permission, but giving them permission, I think it's very consistent with our culture. So I like that. Okay.
Are we ready?
We are ready to tackle. Okay. This is what you've been doing recently.
Right. So this is kind of our outline reworked slightly. This wouldn't be in the book, obviously. I mean, it would be the table of contents at the beginning of the book. I have it here because anyway, it wasn't complete. It hasn't been completely fleshed out. So this is how I'm fleshing out so far. Part 1 and part 2 are the main ones that I wasn't working on part 2, but I was working on part 1 and then leading into part 2 and what that would look like. So this is what you'll be seeing in what I've written today, depending on how far we get. Created for connection. That was what we had decided on for part 1. We had decided on a lot of these themes, but this is, I think, how I wrote them out. So I don't know if y'all want to see the outline or just jump into the reading, but I have the outline here for us. So the chapter 1 is created for connection, and I cover the relentless relational nature of God and salvation as healthy attachment. And then we move into chapter 2, which is confounded with the disconnect. Remember, Kent, you had confused with the disconnect back. Mm-hmm. I think it was at the retreat that we covered some of this. And I was like, I don't like the word confused. I don't like the word confused. Well, I found the word that I liked. I don't know if it still represents what you were sensing when you thought of confused with the disconnect, but confounded. It feels so much stronger to me and more perplexed, right? Like, what in the world? Why am I having this disconnect? Anyway, so that was the word I went for. But again, I'm open to whatever you guys want. Share toxic theology there. I think it's been a while since I've written it now. God no longer speaks. John will share this in depth in the next part. And resulting in functional deism. So some of that toxic theology is your heart doesn't matter. Emotions are dangerous. It's all about your will. I don't even remember how much of this I actually covered, but that was my intent. What I actually do when we read it. And that leads into infected, anemic, and polarized, the perverse and pervasive nature of functional deism. And I didn't touch that part yet. But went in with maybe after your part, John, that you've written on the insidious virus has taken hold. I thought the next C might come in after that in this part of comforted and cared for by Emmanuel. Because we say in the intro that you're going to propose a solution in this part of the book too. So that would lend itself to the solution we're proposing. Is being comforted and cared for by Emmanuel. So who is Emmanuel? God is with us. What does he do when he's with us? He doesn't just tell us what to do and give us mission. He actually attunes and comforts us. That's like the attachment, right? The secure attachment with him, thinking with God versus thinking about God. God with us in all of our disconnected contexts, Kent Smith, and we get to move into context a little bit in that section, knowing that that's probably for a whole nother book. But I wanted to give a place for some of this to just be mentioned. So hopefully y'all are seeing a lot of the ideas that we've talked about over the last year in a way that might be easy and bite-sized and make sense for people.
One question, I wonder if the number 4 there, comforted and cared for by Emmanuel, if that's another part. Because as we look at the title of part 2, it's all negative, infected, anemic, and polarized.
Yeah.
And there's just another idea here.
It totally can be, and we can just rework that intro and have it in a different place. I think I just stuck it here because I was doing so much work in that short period of time. I didn't want to rework our framework without talking about it. And so I put it in where we had talked about it being. But yeah, please, yes, we can definitely redesign how we lay all this out.
Good.
Yeah, that was, as I was hearing that was my impulse too, is think in terms of a third part there that would, and I like the placement of that in that it is offering some hope and some sense of direction for where things can get better, how things can get better before we get into our personal narratives and as a preface to what would become then part 5, which is kind of getting into the weeds of how does this begin to take shape in our context.
Great. And I mean, honestly, we could even have, I even thought, well, it would be fun to have the C's as the parts. So we could even have part 2 as confounded with the disconnect, and one of the chapters be infected, anemic, polarized, right? So we can play with all of that once we're done kind of writing and figure out where it fits best and how to break it down best.
I like a lot of the phrases and the words that we're developing. So I like confounded. I like that. Comforted and cared for. Perverse and pervasive. Infected, anemic, polarized. I really like.
So glad, John.
It's just the old preacher in you, John. You love those alliterations.
That's right.
I am so glad. Nothing warms my heart more than when you say that, because when you come to us and go, it just doesn't move me. Kent and I are like, drats. Okay. How do we move John White? Let's move John White.
You really move me in that wild thing. Yeah.
That's right. Okay. So are we ready to jump in?
Sure.
This is so scary. Okay. All right. Who wants to read first?
Well, I can tackle a patch of reading here since John got us started.
All right. Created for connection. And this will sound very familiar to you.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get underway. In the beginning, there was joy. In the end, there will be deeper joy. In between is an astounding invitation. Come share in our delight. Like a baby born into a larger story, a context within a network of relationships that already exists, the universe, the solar system, the earth, and all that is in it burst into life into a story much bigger than itself as well. Even before Eden, the Garden of Delight existed. Even before the Spirit hovered over the earth, even before the words, "Let there be," and "It is good," were spoken, there existed amazing communion, a gift-giving community, an interdependent family of love that we have come to know as Father, Son, and Spirit. From what we can gather through revelation, they were sharing life in an eternally overflowing dance of joy so profound that the universe and all that came with it were created.
Ken, just to comment there, I put a couple of passages, but you've thought about this way more than all the rest of us put together, probably. And I think if you could add some other biblical references, that would be helpful in this section.
Okay, sure.
And just to add to as well, the idea for me isn't that we just have a list of verses there, but that you actually weave the context of the verse maybe in there somehow. Maybe you're quoting several verses or, something like that, but not just references, but actual content of the verses, if that makes sense. So yeah, as you both know, I'm not the theologian here, so feel free, run rampant, enjoy.
If the concepts were footnoted as opposed to just a reference, does that feel better?
Yeah, if you're gonna just post verses, put them in a footnote. That's great. Yes, that would be awesome. Thanks, John. Reactions so far to the opening of the book, Kent and John.
You ever heard
this
before, Kent?
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, this sounds pretty familiar to me. So a couple of curious questions. One, I noticed that you shifted from joy to delight in the third phrase of the big story, and I'm sure you had a reason for that. Talk about that a little bit.
We might have to read more for me to remember because it's been a few weeks since I've written, but I'm sure I did it because maybe because you had the Garden of Delight is what Eden was called. So I might have switched there, but I also think it's because I draw on that word in explaining attachment.
You draw on delight?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
I think so. But Phil, put a note there for yourself. And if you want to change it back, no worries.
Either one is legitimate. I mean, I think the Hebrew word can easily be translated either direction. And so it's not a case of being true to what the text says. It's just about, what we need to emphasize as we're writing the book.
Right.
Yeah, I like the big idea here, which is that um, just as each of us is born into a story, the universe itself was born into a story, and I think that's a great way to kind of get us started on the grand conversation that's at hand. Um, and yeah, I can come back and talk a little bit about some additional text, but I do think, again, thinking about who our audience is here, this doesn't need to be lots of book chapter and verse kinds of stuff. The people who are reading this are not going to that we anticipate will be our primary audience are going to want to know that that's there, but they're not going to want to have it spelled out for them. That will feel like a slowing, I think, of their reading. So I would agree that footnoting is probably what we want to do if we're going to provide biblical reference there.
You can't begin any more cosmically than what this is. The big picture.
John, did you want to give any other reaction before we continue?
No, I think it's great. I think it's really poetic and as well as cosmic. So I love it.
I'll just say I feel really excited when I read that. Like I just feel like, I don't know, almost like the tribal leader gathering the people and sharing the story of the people, right? Our people, our universe, our world. It just feels I don't know. I get really excited just hearing it. So
yeah. Tony, that is my experience over and over again. When we kind of paint this big picture, it's like people remember, oh yeah, that's the story I'm in. But it's so easily forgotten. And I think a lot of people have had almost no access to the big story in simple language that they really identify with. So I do think this is super helpful as a way to get underway.
Thank you. All right. Kent, do you want to keep going? Or you want John to take over?
Sure.
You might as well keep going.
I can read.
I love when I get to write Kent Smith as best to my abilities I can.
Yeah, it makes me feel I have a lot less work to do here. All right, so let's see here.
When we look.
Yeah, okay. When we look to the end of time, there is even deeper joy as another is gathered into this life-giving connection. A bride for the Son has been found. Only this bride is made of all the families and peoples of the world, all who bear the divine DNA originally imparted to that first family in the Garden of Delight. The story in between is where we find ourselves today. It is an invitation to share in this deep delight that love perpetually cultivates. God, the original vibrant family, is indeed relentlessly relational in nature from the beginning to the end and beyond. I like that. It makes me think about, is it Buzz Lightyear that's infinity and beyond? You don't have to footnote that, however.
Just a small item in that first paragraph, would we capitalize Son, or does it matter?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, just to clarify who we have in mind there. Yep. We were created to be loved, delighted in, enjoyed, and marveled over. And as we grow and mature, we are invited to love, delight in, enjoy, and marvel. We were designed for mutual, life-giving relational connection with ourselves, each other, creation, and the dance of love that gives us life.
John's been commenting, so we can continue and address his comments
later,
or we can address them now, either way. But
so,
John?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a beautiful poetic phrase. I'm just trying to put myself in the place of someone who maybe hasn't been part of the Luke 10 communities reading this. Do they need more on that, or maybe not?
So I think it is a referral back to this whole paragraph right here.
Yeah.
Where we say an interdependent family of love and then a dance of joy. So we're referring back to the concept of the Trinity at the beginning of time, literally just 2 paragraphs above, right? So I didn't think we needed to like define it even clearer what the capitalized dance of love is. But if you think that we do, feel free to jump in and add something that makes sense to you.
I'm actually good with that. You can
Okay.
I think we could probably at the first reference there, just footnoted. I mean, it is a big, again, this is not going to be all of our readers, but a lot of people will be aware that there's a lot of conversation in theology circles these days about perichoresis and the dance of love, the dance of joy. So I think,
can I ask you to footnote here?
I'll put in a reference to at least one work on that.
Thank you. Great job, you guys. Great suggestion, both of you. I'm going to assign it to Kent Smith. It's assigned to you, man.
Uh-oh.
And then does family need to be capitalized here? Maybe our editor can do all of that. Maybe it's irrelevant. I don't know. Yeah. Do you have a preference, Kent?
I think that you have capitalized the L in love is maybe enough to kind of clarify, but yeah, I'm open to an editor suggesting otherwise.
All right, thank you. John, you want to go on? Or do you want me to read it? Yeah,
happy to do that. Yeah, and so I think obviously here we're making an important transition, which is I think what's been on your heart, Tony, and I think rightly so. So this is an important section. So salvation as healthy attachment.
Carry on, John. I'm going to step away from the camera for a second.
Okay. Thank you, Crispin Mayfield. In the Bible, this Trinitarian community we are invited to join is described as being Hesed or Chesed, Hebrew for devoted, faithful, and unchanging love. Used to describe God 253 times in the Old Testament, Hesed conveys the kind of strong attachment to others that no matter what they do or how many times they do it, we will still want to be with them.
Should we look at the footnotes as we go or after?
Either way.
Okay, I think I just footnote let me see. Yeah, Transforming Fellowship by Chris Coursey. So most of these footnotes are books except a few scriptures towards the end.
Good. Yeah, I think that's great. Let's see. Okay, we might call this love, but as Chris Coursey says in Transforming Fellowship, it is more like swallowing a fishhook than what we usually think of as love. Hesed binds us together in a way that automatically changes our thoughts, feelings, and actions. So, as you saw, swallowing a fishhook didn't sound very appealing to me. Why would I want this if it's going to feel like being swallowing a fishhook?
And maybe that's what we can say. This might not sound appealing, but this is how strong attachment affects us. I think that's a great statement, John, that you can just add in there, or we can add in there to note, to say, yeah, this doesn't sound like fun. But if we deceive ourselves the minute we think our attachment doesn't affect us and that we choose, we have immediately deceived ourselves.
Well, so I certainly agree with the concept. I just wish we could find a better metaphor or picture to describe what that's like.
Work on it. Let me know.
Yeah. You know what they do with in sign language, I think, how they sign addiction?
No, how? Oh, with a fishhook, yeah. And it also, I think it's very good because attachment in of itself can be very harmful, and it can be very healthy. So, attachment, it can be insecure, as we know, and that insecure attachment can lead directly to addiction. And so I think that's the point we're trying to make here is attachment is so strong you cannot choose your way out of it. You can't. You can't get the hook out of your mouth. You cannot change. You can't choose your way out of it. But through healthy relating, that fish hook can be, that attachment or the hook that's there could be redirected, I guess, to a healthier owner of that hook. Maybe a healthier relationship that you're attached to, instead of someone who wants to cook you and fry you, maybe, or
There's a lot of things about that metaphor that I'm
anyway, work on it. Let me know if you find something better.
Yeah, let me jump in on that just for a second, because I had the same visceral reaction, John, when I read that. It was just like, ooh.
And I am quoting Chris Coursey straight out of the book, so yeah.
I get it, and I see the strength of the metaphor. It's, you know, the idea that it's not something you choose, and that it's very powerful to hold us. There are two other core biblical concepts that I wonder about in terms of whether they fit here. So Hesed, you know, so this sticky love, as some of our authors like to talk about it, but also covenant, which is this immutable, unbreakable cutting of an agreement between God and ourselves that holds a lot of the strength that we're looking for, I think, and then the idea of Hebrew knowledge. So yada in the good Yiddish translation, yada yada yada. The knowing that is the relationship between Adam and Eve that produces a son. It's that deep, interpenetrative, interdependent, but in a very profoundly holding level. So, you know, a hook is one metaphor, but I think covenant is another metaphor, and I think yada is another, the knowing of the Hebrew. And I don't know if we need a combination of those to kind of carry the strength of all this, or, you know, what's best. But anyway, just putting a couple other things on the table for us to consider there.
Yeah, I think those are beautiful, and might even at this juncture be important to draw on a name, Kent, as we're trying to paint a picture for people that what the Bible talks about is attachment, you know, what we would call attachment love.
Mm-hmm.
And those are really beautiful other ways of drawing that conclusion as well that might be helpful for our audience. So when you get in here, I can put notes to what you've just said in a comment so you won't forget, and then you'll be prompted when you get in here to write that might be still on your heart to put in here.
So more work to do on this little section, it sounds like. I mean, the concepts we're in agreement about, but the descriptors we might work on a little bit.
Good.
Okay, I'll continue on. Let's see. God wants this kind of deep emotional connection with us. He designed us for it, and we will only have true shalom once we feel deeply delighted in. Shalom should probably tell us.
We haven't defined, right? We need to define it, probably at least in a footnote, if not here.
Yeah, I think you're right. Let's see. Dallas Willard and Jim Wilder, in their book Renovated, ask the question: is salvation itself a new and active attachment with God that forms and transforms our identities? Sharing how identity and character are shaped by who we love, not by what we know, they go on to make a strong statement. I love that you're putting quotes in here, Tony. This is very good.
I knew that would please you, Tom. Y'all know I exist to make you both happy, right?
I could say more, but I won't. Okay.
Thank you.
Western Christianity has long taught that we are changed by what we believe and what we choose. That is, by the human will responding to God. Attachment to God would functionally replace the will as the mechanism of attachment and transformation.
Of salvation and transformation.
So salvation and transformation. Oh, that's big stuff.
It is very big stuff. Yeah. We're going to make some bold statements in this book, guys.
Yeah.
So
Then I break it down for people because most people won't understand that quote, I don't think. So that's what this next paragraph is hopefully doing.
So just a quick thought on that. Again, this is just something to unpack a little bit more. But so the word salvation that they're kind of just using as the broad category here to describe attachment is variously translated, but rescue is one metaphor for that. So I'm not even exactly sure what I want to say here. I think one of the things that I would want to at least consider in alongside of what they've said is this more about reclaiming what is already there as opposed to kind of like a whole new state of being, so it's kind of a nuance, but the notion of rescue is not I am creating something that has never been before, but really that I'm taking something that is imprisoned, that's been captured or captivated, and freeing it, putting it back in its natural environment. So just some ideas to think about as we're nuancing how we want to shape this section. So yes, there is a new creation, but it's really a recreation of something that was already in God's mind when he created that person or that community.
Yeah. And right above, we say we were created to be enjoyed, delighted in. That was what we were created for. And then, but yet something's happened, right? And we haven't gotten into that necessarily yet. Continue thinking on that, Kent, and where we bring that in and when. And if we want to actually define salvation in this moment or not. I think what they're trying to point out, I'll say it in this paragraph, but yes, keep thinking about that. And I've written some notes down so I can continue to kind of note these things that we're talking about, so that when you get to hear alone, when each of us come back to this alone, we have these notes on the side to kind of accompany us.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. But I'm totally following with you. Yeah. Well, and let me throw this at you, Kent, because what I hear you saying is, in your mind, salvation is not starting something that's never been there, but actually restoring the attachment, the healthy attachment with God that we were designed for. But part of me goes, but has a baby ever had that healthy attachment with God if they've never had a healthy attachment at all? And is it salvation now the possibility to have this healthy attachment that I actually never had that possibility because my attachment was so walked or morphed, not even because I wasn't saved but because I'd never had a healthy one or never had that. So even though Jesus might have been close to me as a child, I couldn't sense it. I couldn't feel it. So I never had that. And now I get to have that possibility because of rewriting some brain skills in my mind that might have had to begin with someone enjoying me physically, right? Like a person sharing the gospel with me to some degree is someone enjoying me enough. And now they have some type of sense of what attachment is. And so we used to talk, Matt and I used to say, it's about belonging before believing. A lot of people who don't know God at all, it's about them belonging to community first. And you shared this in your thing. And then now they can believe because they actually had a secure, healthy attachment with someone. And so now they can have it with God too. And God is restoring in a sense because we were created for that. but that person never had that before. It's not like they had it and then they lost it and then now God's restoring it to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's old Christian arguments about original blessing and original sin, and we could get into that, into the weeds of that. But I think the point is that there is a capacity, an innate capacity in humans, because we are in the image of God, to love in the ways that we're talking about, to be attached in the ways we're talking about. And for many of us, our actual historical experience is we've seen little or none of that. So yeah, I think, both of those things are true, and we want to just think about how to say them well, simply and accessibly. Yeah.
Ken, I like the word capacity for that. If I'm trying to figure out what I'm struggling with, it almost leans over into universalism a little bit. If we're talking on an individual basis, that I was originally attached to God, all of us were. Every human being was, and then we got kidnapped, and then we had to be rescued or something. And I just want to be. I guess I want to be careful about how we're going to say all that. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing because I vaguely remember a conversation like this when we were all in person at the conference. And it might happen again when we're on our retreat, because I wonder where Kent Smith falls on this. And John, I don't know if you know. And maybe we have some big disagreements that we'll have to talk through.
Yeah. What does that look like in the book? And
what would that look like? Yep. Anyway, we can put a pin in that one right now and come back to it. Sorry, I'm just laughing because I love watching you too when you pull out swords and go for it. It's just the most beautiful thing on the planet. So love watching it, and that's the joyful laughter here, is watching you two sharpen each other.
Well, I have to say, well, go ahead.
I was just going to say one of the great mystics described the situation as having fallen into a ditch, and there's a lot of strength in that metaphor, I think. So the notion of rescue then sort of kind of makes sense in light of that.
Well, I think the fine points of theology bother me less these days, as I think I have learned to think Hebraically a bit more, which is simply comfortable with not knowing, paradox, all those kinds of things. So, yeah. But it still pops up. You want to try to do another paragraph here?
Sure.
We've got about 15, 17 minutes left.
Sure. Let's see where we are. Whoop. Yeah, another paragraph would be great, but we are almost done with this chapter.
Okay.
So maybe we can do it.
All right. Essentially, Willard and Wilder are saying that salvation is not as much based on what we say we believe or even what we choose, but on growing the closeness with God that he longs to have with us. We can choose to do many good things, especially if we are trying to gain connection. However, it feels very different when these good things we do flow out of the closeness we already have with God and others. We don't get close to God by doing these good things. Only a strong, secure attachment can change the deformed automatic patterns in our brain. Jesus refers to this reality in Matthew when he says, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven," Kent. Many say they believe and choose to do the right things, live above reproach, prophesy, cast out demons, and more. Yet Jesus seems to not know them at all. "Depart from me, I never knew you." And of course, my comment up there about what we say we believe, we have to think about the scripture that talks about if we confess with our mouth and so on.
Yeah, I did rewrite this, John, censure comment. So I was hoping that censure comment, this was actually more helpful.
It is softer, I think, than what we originally had. So that's good. Keep thinking about it.
Because what I added was this verse. Yeah. Not everyone who says to me, directly contradicting the verse you just said, of all you have to do is say with your mouth, confess with your, well, wait, Jesus said right here, there's people who say and confess, and yet he doesn't know who they are at all.
So there's the inherent tension between both verses, and I think both have to be referenced probably.
Right. You throw that in here, but I think Jesus is expounding on that verse here, what it means to say you believe. He doesn't mean literally just, oh, I believe in Jesus, and then walk away from that. So it'd be good to look. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Pressing ahead. We all know the two most important commandments given to the people of God. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Wilder challenges us to consider that where Scripture speaks of love, it might mean attachment, an emotional bond with someone else that forms in our physical brain that has the power to change our character. If this is true, how would it shift our practices to know that changing beliefs and actions actually flowed from attachment love, and that deformed attachment, which we will talk about in the next chapter, will always trump what I know you wanted to work that name in there, always trump what we say we believe, causing our doing to come from motives other than love. Wilder suggests that we, quote, focus spiritual exercises and human relationship exercises twice there, less on changing our beliefs or choices and more on building attachment love with God and with people, which I totally think that's great. After all, Christ died and rose again so that we could have intimacy with God, not just know about him. And it was out of this intimacy that everything else would flow. What if salvation is more about receiving the Hesed love of the original joy-fueled family? What if the lack of character development in our lives is not because we do not know enough information, believe the right things, or try hard enough to change? Well, this is a great sentence. But that we do not have the ability to feel emotionally connected to the God who loves us and delights in us? Could the biggest reason for the weakened state of the church be that we cannot feel God's joy over us or a consistent closeness with him, even though the Spirit is right here? So, if before the beginning of time there was joy, and if at the end there will be deeper joy, and if we are invited to share in this incredible delight of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit that is always present with us, why do we struggle to feel loved by God, to hear his voice? Why do we sometimes or oftentimes feel disconnected? Great use of questions there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a powerful stuff, Tony, getting right at the heart of character transformation. Why is it that we're not seeing much more of that? So good stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I like the way that you wind this chapter down and really segue us into the next chapter there. How come it is that we are not experiencing what has been the claim of Christianity from the get-go. I'll get it out. Yeah, I really like what's there. I think there's some room for refining the wording a little bit, and we'll do that. But I do like the overall thrust of that last 2 or 3 paragraphs there.
Tony, do you work in Crispin Mayfield at some point? I forget.
I am pretty sure he is in the second chapter a lot, I think. Yeah, we bring him up in chapter 2.
Good. I think that's good to reference that.
Yeah, I think he's referenced a lot in chapter 2. In fact, in chapter 2, I think I go through the 3 different attachments that he lays out, and I summarize them for us.
Right.
I didn't know if we needed to go into that much detail, but I did. And then so we can react around, is this too much? Is it not enough? Do we need more? Do we need less? As we read through that, that would be great. And if you have time to read through chapter 2, it's just as short as chapter 1. So it really isn't a long read. But if you have time to read through it and interact before our next session, that might be really helpful. Because I know sometimes I do my best thinking when I'm just alone reading it instead of reading it out loud together. Yeah. Like you did, John, you had notes and stuff. And then I even interacted with his notes and updated it before today, right? So That's really cool when we can work quickly like that with each other on things that are easy and quick, and save the large conversations for when we're together.
Well, we're almost at the top of the hour. Should we go ahead and do a closing round?
Can I ask a quick question about Crispin? Is he still what's the status on his interest in writing a preface for us, or do we know?
Oh, that's a great question. We are live, so I don't want to say anything that would. If he ever watches this, hi, Crispin. I think he definitely. We just have not had the time to follow up with him and meet with him, and so he definitely said he was interested. And if we're like, we love chapter 1 and chapter 2, even our intro, like I could send him what we have when we're ready to share it, and say, this is where the book's going. This is the first 2 chapters. Is this something you would like, you feel drawn to write a foreword for, if we still want that? So I think he would totally be up for that. I just feel like we have some more meetings with him that we'd like to do face-to-face or video to video, and getting to know him a little more. And I haven't had time to pursue him. I have another podcast with him, to do shortly. But I've just been way too busy. So I'm hoping that my schedule will free. John, you're due to do a podcast and you got COVID. So
yeah,
have to reschedule.
I have to reconnect with him on that.
Okay.
So yeah,
that's helpful just to have a little update on where that is.
Closing round. Just like us to do closing rounds, reflecting on what just happened here. What's our takeaway? For me, Tony, I just think you've done great work on this. I'm sure we'll tweak it a little bit here or there, but I think it flows well. I think it's clear. It's engaging, and so thank you for the work you've done. I think it's great. We're getting there. This book might actually get published someday.
Actually, thank you, John.
Yeah, I'm feeling happy and excited for the good progress here. I feel like this is a significant step forward, and having a chapter 1 that we can all be excited about sharing, and that really does help us get underway in the body of the book. So yeah, I feel great about it.
Wow. I just had so much fun writing it. It was about 20 hours on my retreat at my mom's while she cared for my kids. And I wrote 4 hours a day and then swam the rest of the day and laid out at the pool. It was wonderful. And I just really, really cooperated with my body and my spirit and Jesus in not writing on the days I didn't feel like it, writing on the days I did, and literally laying in bed one morning until I felt inspired. And he had a whole paragraph and I was like, oh, that's it. And I'd get up and write. So I just enjoyed myself writing it. I enjoyed the process. It didn't feel laborious at all. It felt delightful, and it was a lot of work. But I got excited even writing it, and just, being able to put Kent's a lot of your vocabulary, your language, your ideas, the way that you framed your world for everyone and the world for everyone. So I was enjoying you guys, enjoying myself, enjoying, of course, Crispin and Jim Wilder and all of them. So I'm delighted that you like the draft and that you think you can work off of it. That is the goal. And so I feel like I've hit the target in some ways, which doesn't always happen when I write and share, as we've experienced. So I'm just super happy.
Super. Well, I think we're done with R&D Circle for today. Yeah,
I think so. Let me just see if there was anyone asking questions at all. We haven't had a whole lot of people interacting, but Scott Carter says hello. Oh my goodness. Is Scott Carter watching this? I can't believe it. That was 36 minutes ago. And he is a dear friend of mine and Hillary's who's still investigating whether he wants to dive into Luke 10 or not. So, Scott Carter, you need to do it. Anyway, thank you, Scott. So good to know you were here. Love you so much. Okay, so that's all the comments. I think we can end this session, and I'll probably put a replay up of it because I don't think we have anything going on for an hour. So I'll put the replay up in case you missed it and you want to see. Actually, I can't. I can only replay what happened before this. Did anything happen with this, Hillary?
Gentle Curiosity with John.
Oh, good. Okay. So I will replay Gentle Curiosity with John until what is it, 1 o'clock that something happens?
2?
2 Eastern. Okay. 2 Eastern, 1 o'clock my time. All right.
Then we have happy hour. Is that right?
Happy hours at 3 my time, 4 Eastern time. Yes. Happy hour, communion. However you experience hanging out with loved ones with a beverage of your choice. If it's wine, if you do that, if it's grape juice, if it's maybe some other drink, that's fine too. And we're going to just commune together in a fun way, relationally, and knowing that Jesus is with us. So happy hour. That's what
we also have a Gentle Curiosity with Susan at 3 before happy hour. Which is
good.
Fun. And we have the Trainer Talk. That's the next event.
Trainer Talk with Jay. Jay and I are just going to wing it. So if you have any questions, John, especially anything you want us to talk about regarding training, will you please stay on and talk with us if you want, or email me the questions you might want us to answer. But John, if you want to be a part of that, if you have time today, we're totally open for that. It's in an hour. Right, Hillary?
Yes, it is. He could also leave a comment if he doesn't want to be too invasive. Right.
It's an hour. You can leave comments. Totally. Like I did this morning with you and Zach. I was just there, but I wasn't a part of the video, and I'm asking you questions. You can do that too if you want to.
I'll see if I can do that. I've got something going, but I'll try to do that.
All right. All right. Ending here. Love you guys.
Bye for now.
Bye for now, friends.